The country's literally dying. We are all just afraid of offending some hypothetical third party that doesn't really exist. And I think that is how the left controls the whole dialogue. People are attracted to truth. I don't think men want to rule over women. I don't want to rule over women. I have to do that. That's my role.
What do you think are some of your most extreme opinions?
There are certainly things I believe that I wouldn't be allowed to even say on YouTube. It would shut down the whole...
The excellent Michael Knowles.
Thank you for using the proper pronunciation of that title.
Oh.
Mr. Shapiro, he does not pronounce it correctly.
How does he pronounce it?
What would they say?
He says something with a couple extra letters, and I don't know, it sounds almost I don't know.
Oh,
but excellent is the proper
Excellent
word.
Michael Knowles. And since we're on the topic of Ben Shapiro, I was wondering if maybe we could just start this off by you reacting to this little clip we have right here, okay?
Yeah.
Just letting us know your thoughts.
Okay.
Free association. Michael Knowles.
I was going to say good Catholic. He's not as good as me, but he's, mediocre Catholic.
And mediocre person. I mean, I think we can agree on that. I mean, Knowles is a discredit to the company, and he's execrable. It's not my free association. I really shouldn't be sounding off.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, he's just awful. I mean, the fact is that Knowles has somehow been able to make a career out of being a complete empty vessel, and it's incredible to me. And all the stuff where he's not an empty vessel, whenever he talks about it, I mean, my goodness, have you heard him go on for like an hour about Aquinas? It's really just, it's pretty terrifying.
So I like, by the way, I like here how Ben says I'm an empty vessel, and then I just pontificate for hours about St. Thomas Aquinas, the greatest theologian ever to walk the earth. You know where it comes from, though, especially the empty vessel phrase.
Where does it come from?
Mr. Shapiro, my friend of many years, he wrote a lot of books when he was a young man. He started writing his first book, I think he was in the womb. And then I come along. It's about the year 2017, and I published a book called, a masterpiece actually, called Reasons to Vote for Democrats, a Comprehensive Guide. And it didn't have any words in it. And that book, at the time, since then Ben has sold a lot of books. I think at the time, my book without any words may have sold more than all of Ben's books that he put a lot of time and effort and words into. And he was not happy about that. But then there was one other. This is something that really got Ben. 2016. The election. Hillary Clinton was supposed to win. Ben is Mr. Data. Ben is Mr. Facts. All of the polls said Hillary Clinton was going to win. Now, I'm a little bit more, when it comes to politics, a little bit more about intuition. And I said, I don't know if I believe that the Wicked Witch of the West is actually going to be elected president. And Trump, he's kind of a weird guy. He's a big celebrity, though, for 40 years. I don't know. And Ben said, okay, Knowles, I'll give you 4-1 odds. 4-1 on a $100 bet that Trump is going to lose. I said, okay, I don't know if I'd take even odds, but 4-1, I'll take, sure. Okay, Ben. And I now have a check framed in my office at home, crumpled up because he crumpled it and threw it at my head. But it's now framed, $400. And he said in the memo it was for ignoring data. I think that was the beginning, the origin story of Ben's frustration.
So I'm curious, when you made this book, there's no words in it. It's just blank pages. How much did you make on a book like that? Is that technically now a New York Times bestseller?
Well, it is certainly a bestseller. It is not a New York Times bestseller.
Why is that?
They wouldn't acknowledge it?
They would not acknowledge it. Now, the book, when I say a bestseller, I mean a #1 Amazon bestseller. And there are a lot of books that claim to be that.
Sure.
Because they'll say, well, in the category of Norwegian fantasy troll fiction, I'm the #1. But this was the #1 Amazon bestseller in all of books for 11 days.
And what was in the book?
So the book, I can't say it had 0 words.
Okay.
It had a very limited number. It opened up with an epigraph from Thucydides, the ancient Greek historian. And the epigraph said, this is not an effort to win the applause of the moment, but a contribution for all time. Because my book was not just for the 2016 cycle. It remains true every election cycle. And then it had about 10 chapters or so on economics, on civil rights, on immigration, on foreign policy, of all the reasons to vote for Democrats. Now, those chapters were completely blank. They did not have any words in it. But then, at the end of the book, I had a very, very extensive bibliography. I cited all of my sources, modern, medieval, ancient. And I think that the book was very persuasive. To answer your question about the money, I made a lot of money on that book. I sold hundreds of thousands of copies of this book. I don't even know what the number is at this point. I don't think it's 1 million yet, but it might be getting up there.
Sure.
I self-published it, so it cost me nothing to do
Oh
this.
my gosh.
And it wasn't like a stunt, meaning I actually just did it to irritate my friends and relatives.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to make a ton of money. And then I see the thing starts ticking up. I was having a cigar with Jeremy, the God King Boring over here, and we're refreshing Amazon, and it's, number 20,000. Oh, that's pretty good. Number 20,000 on all. Then it's number 5,000. Then it's number 500. Then it's number 20 or something. So Fox News called me, asked me to go on the morning show the next day. I said, okay. I wake up for the morning show. This is LA time. And it's number 6. I do the morning show. I go back to sleep, 4 a.m. or something. I wake up, it's number 1. And it stays at number 1 forever. So here's where the real money kicked in. I get a request from Simon & Schuster to purchase the rights to my nothing. To my nothing. And so I sort of thought, well, do they know that they could just kind of do it?
Yeah,
I can't.
What protects someone else from taking your idea, doing the exact same thing, copying it, making it a little different?
Well, they could do it for Republicans.
They could do it. I know. Maybe
Right.
I should have played both sides.
You should
I could have doubled my money. I wasn't mercenary.
Does that exist on the other side?
Yeah, there were a bunch of copycats who all tried to do it, but they didn't. The libs, man.
It's the essence of it.
Yeah.
They also just aren't.
You're first to market.
You
It's
gotta be
really
first to
an
market.
advantage.
It's got to be really high quality. It's hard to make nothing high quality, but the cover needs to look like a real cover. The epigraph has to be a good epigraph.
Right.
It has to, it has to be a little subtle to it.
Right.
And the libs, they did all these, it was like 10 reasons why I hate that dumb idiot Donald Trump or what. I said, that's not even the joke, man. You're not getting it, And so it was number 1.
Yeah.
Simon & Schuster tries to buy it. I talk to Jeremy. I say, hey, man, Simon & Schuster's offering me I think it was like $25,000 to buy the rights, plus then royalties. I thought, I didn't have a lot of money. I'm a young guy. I say, this is great, right? And Jeremy says, no, you can't take it. So what do you mean I can't take it? He goes, $25,000 is not funny. I said, no, it's funny to me, man. It's pretty good. He goes, no, it's got to be at least 6 figures. You need at least a 6-figure advance on your fake book for it to be funny. I said, oh. Then I get a request from another publisher, St. Martin's. Then Ben, though he was upset about how great the book was doing, he then, because of his masochism, decided to give me his book agent to help negotiate the deal. So he said, okay, Knowles, I'll set you up with this agent.
Yeah.
You can negotiate a contract for nothing. I tell the agent it's got to be 6 figures. He said, all right. They negotiated all the way up. We get the deal. But the publishers just didn't get the joke. So they said, okay, well, Michael, the one thing you can't do is make fun of us for giving you a bunch of money for nothing. I said, why'd you give me the money then? The whole reason to do this is that's how you get more media and it'll be funny. They won't do it. So the sales start to decline. They say, we got to turn this around. I said, okay, put me back on Fox. So I go back on Fox. We had already done the shtick about the book. So they asked me, it's just something about, I think it was Trump's policy in Syria, maybe. And I complimented Trump. In those days, Fox and Friends had a big audience, but there was only one audience member who counted. And that was the man sitting in 1600 Pennsylvania who happened to be watching that morning. And so I go off the show, I go take a little nap at the office, and I wake up as my phone explodes because Trump had tweeted out, Reasons to Vote for Democrats by Michael J. Knowles, a great book for your reading enjoyment. And then it goes right back up to number 1. and then the New York Times won't acknowledge it. Okay, fine. I'm offered another book contract. I say, well, what do you mean another book? What have I ever done that would give you the impression I can write a book with words? People were offering me book contracts. So I finally take one years later.
Yeah.
I write this book and I realized this had to be a pretty good book because otherwise the headline would say Knowles should stick to what he knows,
Nothing.
Right? And it would have been a disaster. So I really put a lot into this book. And the book hit number 1 on the Publishers Weekly list, which is tied to actual book sales. It sold 18,000 copies the first week or something. I outsold the number 1 New York Times bestselling book by like 40% that week. Nowhere on the list. Even with my book with words, nowhere on the list would the lying fake news New York Times put me on their list.
What was the second book?
That was called Speechless. So the first book,
I love that. Great name.
thank you. It was a
Creativity,
little,
yeah.
just a little nod. there.
Yeah, sure.
So the first book had no words. The second book was entirely about language. And I actually didn't know how the second book was going to sell because it was not just a usual right-wing polemic. I think had it been a usual right-wing polemic, how to own the libs and so can you, it would have sold reliably very well. But this one was a little different because it was a book about free speech. But at the time, all the conservatives were defending free speech in this grandiose, absolutist kind of way. And my book actually disagreed with that. And my book said, no, free speech absolutism, that's a liberal idea. That's not a very conservative idea. Actually, all societies have a right to standards and norms. I don't think you should just be able to go scream whatever you want in the street, even if it's offensive or obscene or fraudulent or whatever. The question is not a battle between censorship and free speech. The debate is actually between two competing sets of standards. So the question is not how much should we be allowed to say? The question is, what are we going to say? Because free speech in the abstract doesn't mean anything to people who have nothing to say.
Although before we go into that, AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. Kind of like the beard trimmer jack that you should be using that you're not using.
At least I can grow
You're
a
not
beard.
using it though. Anyway, it's storming every industry and literally billions of dollars are being invested, so you gotta buckle up.
The problem, though, is that AI requires a bunch of speed and processing power, so how can you compete without costs spiraling out of control?
That's why it's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or our sponsor, OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, which nobody is interested in, and of course nobody does it quite like Oracle. So now you could train your AI models at twice the speed and at less than half the cost of other clouds.
So if you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/iced. Once again, oracle.com/ICED. Guys, it's completely free to try it out. I highly recommend it. Oracle.com/iced. Thank you so much, Oracle, and back to the podcast.
What led you to this point today? Did you always have an interest in these sort of beliefs?
Yeah, I
What
was
your life like
always
growing up?
interested in politics and show business for my entire life.
Acting,
That's what I wanted
right?
to go in. I was an actor. I'm also the only human being ever in the history of theater who got over the acting bug. I was cured. I actually have lots of moral qualms about acting too. Maybe we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
But I always liked show business and I always liked politics from the time I could remember. And then I was always relatively conservative. I've had this haircut since I was 6 years old. I started smoking cigars when I was 15. Oh, by the way, I have I brought you guys for my company Mayflower Cigars.
Wow.
I brought you these are some of the rarest items on the market right now.
Why is that?
I sold out of these cigars. I had a 4-month supply when we launched this company, Mayflower. We sold out in one day, 30,000 cigars. These cigars took a year to get the blend and the brand perfect. I worked with the best factory in Esteli, Nicaragua, which is the best cigar capital in the world right now, as far as I'm concerned. And there's 2 cigars here. This is the dawn. That's your breakfast. Have it with coffee smoke. This is the dusk. That's your evening smoke. You have a full day right there. You got to figure out, you're on your own for lunch.
How much can you smoke
day?
of a cigar in one day? Are you like a multiple cigar per day type guy?
I can be. I try to keep it to about one, just not even for the health. Or, I actually think cigars are on the whole, relatively good for you. The FDA has not looked at that statement, though there have been a couple studies on this that have shown that fewer than 4 cigars per day have no statistically significant correlation with mortality.
Cigars.
Yeah, and there was one actually done by one of the cancer societies, a major study that showed that the cigar... Now, there's a difference between cigarettes and premium cigars, but for premium cigar smokers, the... premium cigar smokers who smoked in moderation actually lived slightly longer than the non-premium cigar smokers.
Is it a social thing? Could it be that people who smoke cigars maybe do so in a group setting?
So I think part of it is it's social, so you're more likely to have good conversations with guys and, relax a little. Some of it, you could have a cigar alone. I'll have a cigar at night with a book and a drink. That's the only way I really get to relax, right? I got kids running around. I'm working here all day, we're traveling. If you sit and relax, I think stress is a real killer, and that's one of the few ways. A man is not going to go to the spa usually and get a face mask and cucumbers on his eyes. So that's one way to do it. So it's the sort of thing where, yes, you get a tiny little bit of a nicotine buzz, but just like you get a little jolt from the coffee, but it's also just about focusing on these flavors, and in the same way you would with a scotch, same way you would with a good meal. And it's just, I think if you can take your mind off your work and your responsibilities for 40 minutes a day.
But there are other certain outlets that you could achieve that with, right?
Meditation.
I know
noticed,
about me. Yeah,
have you noticed
maybe.
any detriments to smoking cigars? Anything bad in your life?
No.
Maybe like you went on a date with a girl and she was like, it smells a little bit.
So my wife, who is a saint walking around the earth, she's right about almost everything. She hates the cigars. She hates them. And I told her, I said, look, I'll defer to you on a lot of things, but there are very few things that I've loved longer than I've loved you. Cigars are one of them, because I kissed my wife for the first time at age 16, but I smoked my first cigar at 15. And
It was your first love.
It was my
So
first
I'm
love.
curious, what does she hate most about you smoking cigars?
Just the smell. She encourages me to go have my nightly cigar, go sit outside.
to relax. She
Yeah,
likes you
to
post
relax.
cigar maybe when you're
I have
calmed
to admit,
down.
Yeah,
and
she
stuff
likes
like
to
that.
kick me out of the house.
I think
you
your
know.
wife is right. I can't stand the smell of it. Like I've seen some of these cigar lounges, and you walk down the street, and it stinks.
The
Like
issue-
you're 20 feet away, and you smell the thing, and you get there. It looks like a weird place inside. It's always really tiny, and there's like 5 dudes in there all like just. It's kind of weird.
You like that.
I love it. I love it. Here's another reason I love it. So, I'm a married guy. If I go to a bar, what do I get out of that? If I go to a regular bar, there's going to be girls around. Now, I don't think I'm going to be tempted to go, pick up a girl at a bar. But even the appearance of impropriety, I don't need that. I don't need some woman walking up and someone takes a picture and it looks bad. I don't need any of that. Well, you know what I want to do when I go to a bar? I want to sit with a bunch of fat old dudes, and I want to talk about politics and religion and philosophy. And I want there to be a woman repellent all around the bar. And for the bars that I go to, there is. And that would be a big cloud of smoke that you're describing.
Yeah. Now, is that more so because of you, or because your wife would prefer you not to go to a bar with a lot of women around?
No,
her?
my
They're
wife,
all drinking.
She's not worried that, I'm going to go be Don Giovanni. But it's more for me. I just don't need the appearance of impropriety. I mean, I think there's real wisdom, first of all, in avoiding the near occasion of sin. So I think you would probably have to torture me to get me to ever cheat on my wife. But I don't need the occasion of sin to be near to me. And then furthermore, I don't need the sin of scandal. I don't want there to be the appearance. I was talking to a friend of mine who was set up one time. He's a celebrity. Maybe one might have heard of him. And he was taking pictures with people sometimes. They would come up, let's have a picture. And so this woman says, can we take a picture? And he has his hand on her shoulder or something. And right before the picture's taken, she grabs it, pulls it down. And so he's like, hey, get out of here. They got the picture. And then all of a sudden, you're in essentially a blackmail kind of a situation. I don't need any of that, okay? I just want to sit. Also, even let's say you have a more innocent conversation with a chick at a bar. I don't want to sound like I'm sexist or something, but what? I don't know. I don't need to.
Go ahead. No, what were you going to say? What are you going to say?
Topics lend themselves more toward the conversation among women. Certain topics lend themselves more to the conversation among men, and certain things guys are not going to talk about, or they're not going to talk in a certain way if they're in mixed company.
Okay, well, let's get on to that. But real quick, while you were on the topic of like that photo thing where the girl grabbed his hand, I've seen this meme of Ben, your very own Ben Shapiro. Yeah. He does a hand levitation. Have you seen that? Every single time he takes a photo. Keanu Reeves?
I think he does the same.
With a woman. His hand is like 6 inches off of her shoulder, and he's always like smiling the exact same thing.
People love the Keanu ones though, because they're like, look how respectful he is. He's not even touching the other person.
Yeah, to me that's a little too far.
You think that's too far?
I think it's a little too far.
But it is a safety precaution, right?
It is.
It's a safety precaution.
It is a safety. I just sort of think, I fear that if I were to do that, that would be ceding to the liberals and the Me Too movement way too much ground. I think it's okay. If someone asks you for a picture, they like you, you can be chummy and put your hand, make sure they don't pull your hand at any bad
But couldn't that
place.
happen with a guy too? Hypothetically. There's nothing stopping a guy from grabbing your hand and putting it down and taking the photo.
Luckily, my hands aren't that long, or my arms aren't that long. But yes, no, it could exactly. It could happen too. And I just sort of think, if I live my life in a way that has integrity, if I do my best to do that, and I am the person who I present myself to be as much as I possibly can be, then people just aren't going to believe it. That sort of a trick just is not going to work. And so I think that's the better way to focus on it. But who knows? If all of us end up getting Me Too'd at some point, then Shapiro and Keanu are going to have the last laugh. When it comes to, do I have to? Is everyone out to get me all the time? I sort of think there are two kinds of fear. There's servile fear and there's fear of the Lord. Right? Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and servile fear is cowardice. So we don't ever want the servile fear. This is what I think. I go to these schools and I give speeches, and sometimes people make death threats, sometimes more than others. And we take security precautions very seriously around here, but I'm not going to live my life in constant fear that some wacko is going to pop me off. It could happen. Okay. Well, that's life, and I'll prepare in case that happens. I'd be more inclined to prepare my soul than to constantly be worried, and checking every corner of the day. At a certain point, then they win, don't they? If you're constantly in fear of these things, then they've already won.
But you know what? Before we go into that, these days, a lot of people are beginning to learn about the benefits of fasting, like weight loss, better gut health, mental clarity, and increased physical performance. As someone who's tried this myself, the whole not eating thing is not for everyone. It's a bit intimidating, and that's why our sponsor, Prolon, was created.
Prolon is a revolutionary plant-based nutrition program that nourishes the body while making cells believe they're fasting.
It's been researched and developed for decades at the University of Southern California's Longevity Institute and backed by leading U.S. medical centers. Prolon helps promote healthy blood sugar, support cardiovascular health, and reduce abdominal fat.
You basically get the benefits of doing a fast while still consuming food. And all of this starts with Prolon's 5-day program, which includes snacks, soups, and beverages, all designed to keep your body in a fasting state. When I received the 5-day fast box from Prolon, I was surprised how well laid out the program is. They make it incredibly simple to show you exactly what you need to eat to stay on track. I absolutely loved the tea, and the nut bar was my favorite. It was actually incredibly tasty, and even just doing this for one day made my body feel much better overall. Try out Prolon right now because they're offering you guys 10% off their 5-day nutrition program. Just go to prolonlife.com/ICH. That's prolonlife.com/ICH, or click the link in the description to get 10% off your 5-day nutrition program. Thank you so much, Prolon, for sponsoring this episode, and back to the podcast.
So you were doing something similar with Ben, where you would go to colleges and do debates. What were some of the craziest experiences that you've seen?
I had one last night, actually. I was at Vanderbilt here, a local speech. Go in, nice packed auditorium, everyone looks good. I start to give my speech, and out pop these pro-transgender activists. They snuck in. They looked fine, but I don't know. They took their masks off, and they jump up. They all have signs. And the irony was, I was there to give a speech on settler colonialism. So I was actually kind of taken aback. And they were screaming something I couldn't quite tell. And I said, hold on, wait, who are you? And they said, we're the transgender people. And I said, well, it's always the pro-trans crowd. They are by far the craziest protesters I'd ever, the most violent, the most likely to threaten to kill you and everyone you know. And I mean, it's not even close. There's no other issue. Abortion, immigration, colonialism, nothing touches the trans issue. And so I said, okay, well, why are you protesting me? And it was because of a speech I gave at CPAC, the big conservative conference back in February or March, where I said that for the good of society, and especially for the good of the confused people who fall and prey to this confusion, transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely, the whole preposterous ideology at every level. Those were the exact words, because I've seen them written in print a lot now. I was accused of calling for genocide. I said, hold on. How do you get that? Rolling Stone accused me of that. Huffington Post accused me of that. Other outlet, Daily Beast, I think. And I said I called for the eradication of an ideology from public life. I didn't call for killing people. Where'd you get that? I said, in fact, I prefaced my statement with, for the good, especially of these people who identify as transgender, we got to get rid of this crazy idea. And so eventually all of those libelous outlets had to change their headlines.
I think eradicate is probably a heavy word to use. So I think eradicate, I usually think pests, or I think something in a house like ants. You have an ant calling you, eradicate the ants. Maybe eradicate was too strong of a word.
But you were talking about an ideology, and people thought you were talking about a population.
Yeah, I mean, you hear about eradicate poverty. Does that mean you're going to kill all the poor people? We're going to eradicate Nazism. Does that mean you're going to nuke Germany? I don't think so. eradicate comes from radix, the Latin word radix means root. You can pull it out by the root, which is precisely what I was saying. I don't believe that it's a good idea to merely say, all right, we need to stop transing the 8-year-olds. We need to wait until they turn 9. The 8 is too young, but 18 or whatever, that's fine. No. Either a man can become a woman or he can't. And if a man can become a woman and vice versa, then we should trans the kids. If you can really be born in the wrong body, then for sure we should encourage gender affirming care or whatever else they call it. But if you can't, and we know that you can't, we know that a man can't really be a woman and vice versa, then we shouldn't tolerate it for anyone. It's not going to help anybody. In fact, the largest data set on this ever published just came out of the UK not long ago, and it showed that contrary to popular propaganda, the transgender transition does not alleviate any of the conditions of gender dysphoria. They looked at anxiety, suicidality, depression. They all remain the same, post-hormonal and post-surgical transition. And in one case, in the case of anxiety, it got worse. So I just looked at that in a sober way, and I said, oh, this ideology, which is fairly novel, poses a false view of human nature. It says that your body has nothing to do with who you really are. And so it's harming everyone, it's harming society, and it's harming the individuals who believe in it. So we got to get rid of it. And in America, we had never enshrined transgenderism in our law until about 8 years ago. And then some feisty radicals on the Supreme Court decided to start doing that, some legislators in North Carolina. But it's been bad for everyone. So let's just get rid of it.
So what happened with the protesters?
So the protesters shrieked and yelled, and I made my point, and then they just shrieked profanity at me because they don't have there's no argument. I don't think I'm overstating the case here. I don't mean to sound condescending or anything. There is no pro-trans argument. I've never heard a single persuasive argument. I doubt either of you could even think of one that you've heard that was in any way persuasive. And so they left, some voluntarily, some the police, were helping to get out if they were getting a little more violent. And then we went on with the speech, and I talked about the history of colonialism, which probably disappointed them, actually.
So is your view that would be body dysmorphia, where you believe you're born in the wrong body, and transitioning wouldn't help that solution, that instead it should be treated how else? If let's just say I'm in a male body, but mentally I think I'm female, how would you go about treating that?
Well, you're not in a male body. You are in part your body.
Yes.
So the human being is body and soul. Hylomorphic being combined, right? So what these people believe is that it's a view once called Gnostic dualism, the idea that the soul, the metaphysical self, is opposed to matter, to the body, and that matter is bad and metaphysics is good. And this heresy has cropped up a number of times in history, and it's always been put down, thankfully, because it would destroy civilization. So what would I tell a person who's confused? I'd tell him the truth. That's what I would do. What would you tell an anorexic? An anorexic comes to you. She's 89 pounds. She says, I'm so fat. I just got to put down the sandwich. Would you say, well, to be charitable and to help to affirm what you know yourself to be deep down? Yeah, fatty, put down the sandwich. No, you wouldn't. You say, no, you're deeply deluded and you're at risk of a lot of health problems and even death. And so, no, you just have a defect of your perception, and we're not going to indulge that. We're going to correct that. And that might be hard for you. You might never get over that temptation to starve yourself, but we're not going to help you do it.
Yeah. So your answer would be, in that case, therapy? Of going through maybe self-acceptance or
my answer would be
acknowledging.
Therapy is one way you could do that, though that's a little bit dangerous now because there's so many quack therapists who will affirm these delusions. I guess I would just broadly say I would tell people the truth. And you get the truth a lot of different places. You get the truth from talking to your friends. You get the truth from talking to your family. You get the truth from talking to a psychotherapist. You get the truth from talking to a priest. You get the truth from talking to your guidance counselor. I don't know. But what we have now is a regime that insists to all of those people that if they do not tell a lie, they will be punished. The parents, the teachers, the psychotherapists, they'll lose their accreditation, they'll lose their license. And so I would not only encourage the culture to change, I would also change the law back to what it had always been.
What do you think the harm is to society in indulging in that? Because my belief tends to be, if it doesn't affect me and it makes someone happy, I don't really care. If someone wants to wear a suit every day, doesn't impact me whatsoever. If they want to wear a dress every day or dress, one gender, it doesn't affect me. So it's not really something that, I'm all for whatever makes people happy. How do you believe that is a detriment to society?
Well, society is not just about you, right? Society is about all of us.
Correct.
So even your premise, which is that leave me alone, you do what you want to do, I do what I want to do, we have nothing to do with each other. That is the negation of society, right? But furthermore, the premises are off because you say, well, if it makes someone happy, it doesn't make them happy. Happiness is not merely a subjective question. The anorexic might think that starving herself makes her happy. She'll tell you that, but it doesn't. That is not conducive to human flourishing. So that would be the first issue. The second issue then is the real harm felt by other people. I don't know, when big husky Hank walks into your little girl's bathroom, that's a problem. That damages her. It's scandalous. It's traumatic, and it can lead to sexual assault. And it has. This is what got Glenn Youngkin elected in Virginia. The Loudoun County schools had a transgender bathroom policy, and so some very confused young man went into a girl's bathroom and raped a girl. And what happened? What did the school do? They covered it up. Why? Because it was politically dangerous to touch the trans issue. So what did they do? They sent the kid to another school. And what did he do? He did it again. And what did they do? They covered it up again. So, for the victims of those people who were in harm's way because of trans bathroom policies directly, that would be a harm to society. The girls who train their whole lives to win scholarships in women's sports. We're doing a movie about this now, Lady Ballers. And then they lose their scholarships and they lose their medals. They just lose even the glory of the game because some husky dude who's sexually confused takes their trophy because men are physically stronger than women. That's a direct harm. I mean, that can be a real financial harm even to those girls. So there are all sorts of problems that come along with it. But at a deeper level, even beyond these material issues, living in lies is never going to allow your society to flourish. The further removed your society is from reality, the worse off it's going to be. The libertarian view that you've just articulated, which is, well, leave me alone. You do you, I do me. No one really believes that. You might not care about politics, but politics cares about you. You might not care about society. Society cares about you. We are not free-floating atoms in outer space. Man is a political creature. We are born not primarily with rights and entitlement, but primarily with duty and obligations. You didn't choose your life. You didn't choose how you came into the world. You're not going to choose, hopefully, how you leave the world. And so we need to recognize that we do all live together. We have to figure out how to live together. And we can live together either in accordance with truth that we can all perceive using our reason and objective reality, or we can live according to some kooky narrative of lies that we're constantly rewriting, where no one ever knows what everyone accepts and where the ground is basically quicksand.
So if you think the people that believe the opposite of what you believe are really suffering, do you think that saying something like they subscribe to a kooky narrative of lies is something that's going to flip a switch in their head and think, oh, okay, maybe Michael's right and I can change my ideology? Or do you think that it puts them into a position defending their ego or their idea of who they are that maybe it wouldn't be productive to defend in the first place? Because I think if you're really trying to convince the other side, coming at it from an angle of being I understand your plight, I understand the way that you suffer, and I understand your argument entirely, and I respect you for having said opinions, right? But I have my own, and these are what they are, rather than from a more aggressive angle, because I see these kind of these debate, aggressive undertones, which I see on everybody, right? The left and the right, 100%. But I do wonder to bring people into the center in some capacity, right? It is better, I feel to not be super aggressive and say that the other person's agenda and narrative is just ideologically inferior. To a supreme degree, right? Especially something that so many people subscribe to.
Yeah, I don't think so. It depends on the context. So you're saying in these debate scenarios, sometimes people get aggressive. Yeah, that's a debate. A debate is not when you're sitting with a loved one trying to persuade them of something. A debate is when you and an opponent are standing on stage. You both have fixed views. You will not convince the other person. That's not your job. You're not allowed to convince the other person. They are there to defend their view. You are there to defend the other view. You are trying to persuade the audience. And so the way to persuade the audience, the people kind of in the middle, I think, is through clarity. I think always clarity is charity, but especially during a time of debate. Now, if I were speaking to a trans-identifying person, as I have many times, I would speak very differently. There I'm not having a public debate. There I'm trying to figure out, okay, what has led you to this error so that I can go in and correct that error. For different people, it's going to be different things. For some people, it might be they fell down a Tumblr rabbit hole on the internet. I talked to one trans detransitioner who did that. For someone else, it might be a childhood problem or sexual trauma that they'd had. That's often the case. For some, it might be an undiagnosed medical condition like autism. I talked to a girl who nearly transitioned because her doctors told her that she was, or other doctors had told her that she was the opposite sex. And then fortunately, her doctor and her family and her priest said, no, that's not how reality works. And they found out she had undiagnosed autism, and now she feels a lot better. So it depends on who you're talking to.
But even calling it necessarily like an error is kind of attacking somebody's belief of who they are, their identity. And I think
No, it's attacking their belief.
Of who they are, their identity, right? Saying that like your entire identity is an error, because to them it's their identity,
that they are in error about their identity. That's true, but it's not attacking their true identity. It's not attacking them. I guess that's the distinction.
But to them, that is them.
But they're
right?
wrong. Yeah, and you can't convince someone they're wrong by telling them they're right.
Right, of course not. But I'm just saying to call something an error when someone
what should we call it?
A situation, maybe. I don't know.
What kind of situation?
I guess it could be like attacking someone's religion, where like that's what they believe.
I
think that if anything, it's going to ramp up their side of the argument. It's going to make them angry and defending their position even more. I don't think it's going to spur actual change.
If I felt that there was something really wrong or bigoted or mean-spirited or something about my statement that men and women are different, which everyone everywhere has believed for all of history until 5 minutes ago, then I might soft pedal it. So I have nothing but love and charity for them. And part of that charity is telling them honestly what I think. I mean, you just mentioned that it's sort of like attacking someone's religion. Uh-huh. It's not sort of. It's exactly like attacking someone's religion. They have a belief about human nature, how man relates to the world, to himself, how the body relates to the soul, that is fundamentally wrong. In fact, where I will give the pro-transgender people a little bit of credit is they have an advantage over the modern liberal materialists. The modern liberal materialists who say, you're just your body, you're a bag of chemicals, love is fake, everything in your head is just an illusion caused by firing synapses, and when you die, you turn to worm food and take a dirt nap, right? That's the modern materialist view. The pro-trans people say, no, I'm not just my body. They go too far. They say, I'm not my body at all. But they recognize at least that there is a metaphysical component. Sometimes they fall into error and into liberal materialism again, where they'll say, my true transgender identity is on a brain scan. I have the brain of a woman, but the body of a man. But of course, your brain is part of your body, so they don't really understand that. What they're trying to talk about is the mind. What they're trying to talk about is the soul. They can say, my body, including my brain, could be entirely male, but I'm at a deeper level female. And that's actually closer to the truth of the matter, which is they're saying, I have a soul. And they do have a soul. But then the question is, what is the relation of the soul to the body? Can the soul and the body really be in opposition? Or, and by soul they use the term gender identity, or is your soul the substantial form of your body, which is the matter? And does your sex and your gender identity derive from the soul or from matter? And the fact is, the great thinkers who have ever walked the earth have actually discussed these questions. There is an answer to these things. But because our education system is so extraordinarily weak now, very few people have ever read, maybe have even heard of someone like a Thomas Aquinas or an Aristotle or Plato. They don't read these things anymore. And so they're left totally confused on the questions. But there is an answer, and I think that is a lot more comforting. There's a great tapestry called the Bayeux Tapestry that depicts the Battle of Hastings, 1066. One of the most famous scenes from it is this guy with a funny hat holding a stick, beating his soldiers who are running at him. And it says, here Bishop Odo, holding a stick, comforts the boys. So it comforts. Bishop Odo was not able to fight in the battle, the bishop, but he had a stick. And when his retreating men were coming at him, he hit them with the stick and said, go back into the battle. Go back and fight. And the Biotapestry, one of the most famous pieces of Western art, says he was comforting them, because to comfort is to give strength. And I think the way you give strength is by telling people the truth and putting them on a path that will be conducive to their flourishing and happiness. That's the traditional view. The traditional view in our civilization is the truth sets you free and lies will deceive you and lead to death. The way the modern libs talk about it is that they want you to believe that lies will set you free. Oh, just let them live in their lies. Who cares? It doesn't harm you. It doesn't hurt your bottom line. Just it makes them happy. That the truth can be so harsh and cruel and actually harm people. It's a total inversion of reality.
Although, you know what, before we go into that, you guys might have noticed that lately we've been putting a lot of money back into the podcast. We've been traveling to guests, we've been upgrading our equipment. But the thing is, if you want to get into content creation yourself, it doesn't have to be this expensive with our sponsor, StreamYard. For those that aren't aware, StreamYard is a live streaming platform that allows you to create high quality content with just the click of a button. All you need is a camera and an internet connection, and then you could stream directly from your browser. And what makes it even better is that you could stream across multiple platforms at the exact same time, from Facebook to LinkedIn to TikTok to YouTube and more.
And trust me, guys, if you're trying to blow up, you have to be on every single platform. When we got on Instagram Reels and TikTok, it did huge numbers for us, so I highly recommend it, and StreamYard makes it incredibly easy. How, Graham?
With just the click of a button.
Plus, StreamYard is the best way to start creating content without having to spend any money, because they actually offer a free package for our listeners, linked down below.
That's right. The cost is absolutely nothing to get started, meaning it's going to cost you the low price of $0. And we absolutely recommend it. The link is down below. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the episode.
So you wrote an entire book on language. What do you think is more important in debate, in conversation, in just like transmitting information to someone else? The words that you're putting out with the intent that you assign to these words, or the way that it's received from the other person receiving the information?
Well, one hopes in good communication, one hopes that the two overlap. And the way they overlap is if we have a shared view of reality. This is one of the reasons that the transgender issue is so dangerous to society, is because it rips at one of the most basic aspects of our shared perception of reality, the distinction between men.
Sure, but let's just say you don't have a shared reality with someone else. So what would be more important?
Well, if you don't have any shared reality, then words don't do anything. Because
so then how would you bridge that gap?
Through persuasive and clear language. So what words are is words are symbols that refer to some objective reality outside of us, right? Ideally. This is how we're communicating right now. We're not communicating because I'm in your head and you're in my head. We're communicating because we're using different symbols, and we basically agree on what those symbols refer to. Language breaks down when the relationship between the symbol and the symbolized, between the signifier and the signified, are ruptured, which is increasingly happening. People don't know the meaning of the word woman. That's why Matt Walsh has a big hit movie. It's because one of the most basic words in language is now controversial. So what we see from this then is that the progressives, in a way, have a point when they say language, man, it changes meaning over time. It's what Lewis Carroll writes about Humpty Dumpty in Alice in Wonderland. Humpty Dumpty says, when I use a word, it means whatever I say it means, nothing more, nothing less. And Alice says, well, can a word really mean so many things? And Humpty Dumpty says, that's not the question. The question is, which is to be master? Who is controlling things? Who's controlling the perception of reality? This is why the libs are so frequently using language manipulation to change the political order, both from controlling the public square through big tech these days, but then also by changing the very meaning of words: marriage, woman, patriotism, any of these words. So it's very important for the conservative, I think, or for any normal person who wants to get back to a shared reality, to use words in their proper meaning in a very precise way, even and especially if it's a little bit provocative, because sometimes you've got to be provocative to wake people out of a trance. And so when I use a precise word like eradicate, I'm doing so very intentionally. And that is going to make headlines, and that is going to lead left-wing outlets to lie about me. And that is going to lead left-wing activists and terrorists to threaten my life when they read the lying headlines from the left-wing articles. But I think you actually kind of have to do that, because the only alternative to that is to buy into the manipulated, mealy-mouthed language of the left, to use vague euphemisms, like a word like situation, that will do nothing other than cede to them the ground.
So I want to get your take on this because we try to be as in the middle as we can. We really don't pick a side.
If you stand in the middle of the road, you will be hit by a truck.
Here's what I want your opinion on.
Yeah.
We very much want to be a platform that gives everybody a way to speak their truth, both on the right and on the left. However, we've found overall that we make a very diligent effort to reach out to people on the left and ask them to come on.
And they don't want to come on.
And they don't.
They never.
It's very, very, very difficult. For us, we really want Andrew Yang, Bernie Sanders, and AOC. If we could get those three on,
Be great.
not to argue, not to debate, but purely just to hear them out and learn. And it's very difficult.
We have had a couple
down.
of
we've
people
had
on the
few.
left on our show before. We had Hassan
And
Piker.
they do fantastic.
We
I
had-
love it.
We've had Destiny.
Destiny's amazing.
So-
I don't think I've never.
Okay,
talked to him.
Destiny is
Destiny's incredible.
incredible.
Absolutely
The Daily
amazing.
Wire needs to collab with Destiny in some capacity.
Yeah.
We
I
told
think
Ben,
I was supposed to do something with him.
Absolutely. Do it.
Well,
And the scheduling. didn't
we
work.
told
Amazing.
him.
Amazing.
I think you were on whatever, right?
I was on
think
whatever.
Destiny
Yeah.
was on that, or he was
Yeah,
on Fresh
he
Fit or
was.
something like that.
Destiny and I were supposed to do something, and scheduling got
Sure.
postponed.
Do
but
it.
but
Make
we
it
should do
happen.
it. Yeah, because I like that he's willing to talk to
Yes.
conservatives. I've invited conservatives on my show a bunch, and the irony is there are some clips of me that have gone viral. Owning a lib with fact and logic, and having one of these intense debates. It's really not my style, though. I'll do it when I do it. I think I do it maybe a couple times a year, but I'm much more interested in long form conversations. I'll do a 2.5 hour show with a pro-abortion activist. I did one about a year ago. There were some zingers in there, but I actually do want to figure out what they think, where it comes from, how to correct that error.
Destiny would be great. He articulates everything. He has so much
He's
depth
fantastic.
to his
Does he?
arguments
Yeah.
as well. Yes.
But most of the libs I find don't want to do it. And the thing is, if they're not coming on my show, I say with no false modesty and true humility, I am like the nicest guy on the right. I am the most willing to grant premises and cede ground and try to see it from their perspective. If they're not going to come on my show, they're not going to come on any shows. They're not going to come on Ben's show. They're not going to come on this show, no matter how much you try to be down the middle. And I think part of the reason for that is, one, they don't have very good arguments, but two, they have cultural hegemony. So they have all of the institutions of influence, which means that they don't need to sharpen their arguments. And two, they have no reason to make the arguments because they've got all the power.
You brought up relationships and marriage a couple of times now. I think you said somewhere that you met your wife when you were like 4 years old, right?
Yeah. We were in the womb. No.
No. How did you meet your wife at 4 years old?
It's controversial. We were at least in 6th grade homeroom
Okay.
in middle school. But we may have met in 5th grade district orchestra because I was the, 52nd chair of second violin and she was 53rd or something. But we don't really remember it. I mean, this was a long time ago.
Sure.
And so then in the 8th grade, she had a crush on me. I was dating the lead of the 8th grade musical. It was, a real celebrity romance. And then I had a crush on her in 9th grade. She was dating a much older man.
Wait, did you break up with the celebrity orchestra person or whatever? Like the number one?
We broke up.
What happened?
It was a real torrid love affair. I don't know. One of us didn't hold the other's hand or something. It was
There's got to be more than that.
a few weeks of passion. Yeah,
It was just a few week long relationship.
It was. In middle school,
Yeah.
a few weeks is like you're married for 10 years.
Right.
That's pretty long.
Sure.
But then 9th grade, my wife was dating this much older upperclassman in high school. Oh, I was furious. But then they broke up, and then we started dating in high school.
Who made the first move?
I guess I did. Yes, I
Do you
did.
remember what you
I
said?
did. I do, actually. I remember she had broken up with her boyfriend, and I instantly said, "Oh, we should go watch a movie." That was it. It was just instantly.
So you were kind of waiting.
I was
for
waiting.
them to.
I was
break
waiting.
it.
I was
You're
keeping my eyes out.
Were you friends with her at the time? Kind of like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were friends. I mean, we weren't. I'm somewhat skeptical of men and women being friends, just platonic friends
Sure.
generally, but. We were, yeah.
But you kept your foot in the door a little bit.
Yeah.
You
so
kept
that
your
when
foot,
the
and that's why you're
opportunity-
skeptical maybe of.
That is why, yeah.
Because you were the exact
That was
example.
you, man.
Yeah. Okay, I see.
And
And
then
then
you ever met a girl you tried to date?
when did you realize that this girl you were dating in 6th grade or whatever you said it was?
Yeah.
Or 9th grade?
11th grade, we started dating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was going to be the one.
Pretty quickly, I realized it. My wife and I split for college. We're very we regret this now, but at the time, you got to put yourself in liberal New York. It's amazing how backwards everything was. Everyone in our lives said, you have to split for college. You have to. It's crazy. You can't marry your high school sweetheart. That's what country bumpkins did 50 years ago. You can't do that. You got to split for college. You've got to go date a million people. You got to go, live the hookup culture. And so we were in colleges that were pretty far away from each other. And so we did break up for college. And then rather quickly, I realized, this isn't good, but whatever. I was single for 3-4 years. And then
So you're single all throughout college?
Yeah.
So it didn't even work being split up with her anyways.
Did you guys communicate in between, or did
No,
she
I
go
wasn't
off
single.
and-
Like I was dating other women.
Oh.
I wasn't single. I was sitting.
Okay. And she just went out and had fun.
Yeah,
so you
no.
were not dating anyone else. So you guys
No,
broke.
I was.
or
Why are you guys
were?
trying to make me?
No, I'm just double
Hold on.
checking. No,
I
You
was.
want to
no, I
get,
was-
the timeline correct,
Yeah, right.
here,
No, I was-
sequence of events.
This is, I guess, all's well that ends well. In that I know for certain that my wife is like one of the greatest women ever to walk the earth. And certainly, at present, the greatest woman walking the earth. Because I dated a lot of girls in college, and I thought, why am I doing this? Like, what's the point? I know I have to. I was told I have to break up with my high school girlfriend, and we have to date these other women, and we have to. But it's all just bunk, man. It's totally crazy. It turns out that what people had been doing for all of history is usually better than what a bunch of modern radical reformers are doing now. And the evidence of this is my friends who really bought into that, especially my female friends, one can have a few, I guess, is they say, put your career first, don't pay any attention to relationships, don't get married young, don't have kids young, don't do this. They're all miserable. And I feel bad for them. I'm not saying this to make fun of them in any way. They got duped. I got duped a little bit too, but they got duped, and they were told this by the entire culture. And, then they wake up one day and they say, wait, brunch isn't as fun anymore. Or, actually my puppy is not satisfying a longing that I have. And actually I'd like to be with a person. And, I asked my grandparents, who were married for 69 years before my grandfather died. And, at their 60th anniversary, I said, hey, Grandpa, what's the key to a good marriage? And he was a Navy captain.
Huh?
He said, 3 things, buddy. Patience, shared experience, 54 months of pregnancy, that's a shared experience, and frequent absence, because he would deploy and he'd go away for 9 months at a time. The shared experience is a big one. There's no substitute for that. I have known my wife and her family for the majority of my life. My wife and I went on our first date more than half my life ago. That's crazy. And I'm a young man, that is a crazy thing. And so people don't really have that anymore. And I'm not saying you can't have a great marriage with someone you meet, but it's just harder. It's harder to do that. And I hear all the time people write into the show, young men and especially young women, who say, I just got lied to. Dating is just so hard.
Okay, but you don't think that there's any
yeah.
merit to going on multiple different dates with a bunch of different people and collecting all of these data points about things that you like and things you don't like. And then once you have this rubric, finding someone that kind of fits all of those things. I do think that there is merit in knowing what you know and liking what you like and finding that in someone else.
So this gets to another disagreement about human nature, which is some people say you need to go figure out who you are, and then you need to find that person who will match perfectly with you. The other view of human nature is that we grow together or we grow apart. So I think it's very hard if someone, is single until they're 40 and they date a million girls and they, have their career and they do whatever they want. It's going to be very hard to find someone who fits perfectly into that. You've got a life. You've built a kind of life. You're more set in your ways. You've cultivated habits that are going to be harder to break the longer you do them and the older you are. If you and a person grow from a young age together, look, there's a risk you might grow apart. There's a risk you might have some big blow up and disagreement. Now, I guess that's always a risk with any relationship, but more likely you're going to grow together. My wife's views are going to influence my views. My views are going to influence my wife's. Our behavior is certainly going to influence each other's behavior. And so that view you're describing, it's the most popular view by far of everybody. But I think it mistakes how human nature really works. Liberalism, lowercase l liberalism, I'm not even just talking about the modern crazies, but this whole idea of modernity views man primarily as an individual. And we do our own thing and leave me alone and don't yuck my yum and don't bug me. To oversimplify it, the Enlightenment liberals were wrong. Aristotle was right. Man is a political creature or a social creature. We don't make any sense outside of our social environment. And the basis of that, the fundamental political and social unit, is marriage, is the family, because we're a coupling creature as well. And so if you can couple with a good person, you don't pick a bad one at a young age, you're going to grow up together and you're going to be different people as a result of that than you would have been had you gone separately.
So what event happened in your relationship with your now wife that kind of sold it to you that she's the one?
Well, we got back together because I realized that the modern hookup culture, I won't call it swipe culture because dating apps weren't around yet, but that the modern just like date a million girls and don't treat romance or love or anything as significant was deeply unsatisfying and pointless and just a huge waste of time.
Don't you think there's merit to that as well? It's like the motivation is created from desperation. So when you were away and you felt like you lacked that love with your wife, that was empty in your life, you're like, oh my gosh, I need this back. And then that had fortified it and created some strength that wasn't maybe there.
It's like the zeal of a convert. Look, I was an atheist for 10 years. I'm fairly fervent in my religious views and my faith. In part, that's because I was an atheist. Now, does that mean that I'm more fervent than I would have been had I just stayed in the faith? I don't know. I know plenty of people who are, cradle Catholics who are much more sanctified and edified than I am. So I don't know, but that effect can be the case. And yeah, it could be that 3 years of girls at whatever college you went to send you screaming back to your high school sweetheart, arms outstretched. Sure. But think of just all the wasted time. I had this realization in college. I said, man, if I had spent every moment that I spent chasing girls reading, I would be the smartest person at this entire university. Like, what did it get me? There's no point. And so much of our modern view of sex is pointless, including marriage now, because marriage can be dissolved with no-fault divorce. Even marriage is just kind of pointless. You do it as long as you sort of feel it's personally beneficial, and then you just split up. And you had some kids. Well, that's okay. Better that the parents are happy than that that the parents bicker and stay together. So then we'll go on and we'll just have a new marriage, and that'll break up though because we take our vows and we say we're going to be together till death does us part. But no one really believes that, and so it's just kind of whatever. It's just me. But a man wrapped up in himself makes a small package indeed, and it just seems so pointless. I mean, a lot of the criticism of the LGBT movement from heterosexuals, I think is a little high-handed and misplaced, because the problems run so much deeper than that. What it all boils down to, I think, is a sterile sexual ethic. The idea that sex can be just totally divorced from procreation. This is a view that never existed at all in human history until modern birth control technology and the radicalism of the middle of the 20th century. And now we think that the primary purpose of sex is just to, be titillated for a little while. And, we consider babies to be a sexually transmitted disease. and if, something goes wrong with your contraception, well, at least that's why we need to have abortion, to kill the baby so you don't need to think about it. And it's just totally wrong when you separate means from ends, when you separate actions from their natural consequences, then things are going to go haywire. And the consequence that we're facing now is the country's literally dying. We have a below replacement birth rate, and we have for 50 years. And that's been true around the West. Only one country's even started to turn it around. That's Hungary, through a great deal of effort. So, even if you think I sound like an old fuddy-duddy or something and, people should go out and swipe right, there are actual political civilizational effects. Xi Jinping in China, in South Korea, they're talking about this. They're doing everything they can to turn it around, because otherwise your country literally dies.
So what is your advice to young men who are dating today?
I don't want to sound exactly like Ben. I can't, because Ben talks so much faster than I do. Date for marriage, certainly. And don't make all the mistakes that all of us have made.
And what are those mistakes?
Don't have sex before marriage. Don't view marriage as just some kind of relationship. I hate that word, relationship. It's so devoid of any romance or eros or love at all. You know, do you hear now people, even heterosexuals, will introduce their boyfriend or their girlfriend? They'll say, "This is my partner. This is my," like you have an accounting firm together.
You know what's so funny? I've said that with Jack. I'm like, "Oh, this is my partner," but I'm thinking like business partner, and people look at us, and be like, no, business partner.
Business. We're also lovers, but you know, that's a separate. We do that after the show. Yeah, that would be some of the advice. And
so, what do you call it then? If it's not a relationship,
love. Let's do it. Let's fall in love. That's what Cole Porter was singing. Not, you know, let's do it. Let's swipe right and have a relationship. You got to do that, and then you got to get married, and then you have to have a ton of kids. That's the other thing.
You only have 2.
I only have 2. You know, listen, we got started a little late, but we're working. If I can fill up the trad wagon by, you know, age 38 or something.
How many kids?
My ideal number. Look, I would be open to as many as we could possibly have, but my ideal number, 6 would be good.
That's enough.
It's a little tough.
6 kids.
It's tough especially if you have C-section or anything. It's a little trickier to do.
Expensive.
It's expensive. It's sort of. I don't know, man. I left California, so I already saved a ton of money.
But how do you make sure you have the time to spend with each child individually and give them the time that they need and want from their father?
Well, I don't know that you know, again, I guess we're getting to this kind of distinction between the view that we're primarily individuals and the view that we're primarily social. I don't know that I need to play with my kids individually all the time. I do, you know, a little bit here and there, but we're also together as a family a lot. So that's one way to do it.
What do you think are some of your most extreme or fringe opinions? And are there any opinions that you hold that you feel too uncomfortable to share publicly?
Oh, many, yes.
Really?
No, not that many. I mean, the thing is, there's a writer by the name of Leo Strauss. And this guy, Leo Strauss, a very smart Jewish philosopher who wrote a book called Persecution and the Art of Writing, who said that basically in any age, if you get a little too close to the truth, you will be persecuted by the regime for it. So you have to find clever ways of conveying the truth. And one way would be through esoteric writing. And he makes a persuasive case that for some philosophers, they write in a way that is exoteric, to be understood plainly from the text, and esoteric as well. And this is part of a great conversation with philosophers. So anyway, I think people who have any politically incorrect opinions probably need to engage in a little esoteric speech every now and again. But I don't think my views are particularly extreme. And I'm not just being glib or cute about it. I think among conservatives, even, I have pretty moderate views. It's just that moderation these days, I guess, is in the eye of the beholder. I think moderation is a good thing. I think moderation is a virtue. But I don't think, for instance, that claiming that a man is not a woman, you know, I don't think that's extreme. I don't think claiming that a baby is extreme. I don't think claiming that God exists is extreme. I don't think claiming that the family is a real thing and a basic unit of society is extreme. I guess the libs would say that that is extreme, but you know, I can't help that.
Is there anything too extreme that you would feel uncomfortable talking about on camera?
Well, I certainly wouldn't bring it up. There's cameras all over there. I don't know if you guys saw that.
No, they're off, man. They're off.
Oh, they're off. Yeah. They're not recording.
I'm trying to think what my sort of edgiest...
Or maybe if there is something, you could just say, yes, there are a few things that I do believe that would just be too triggering to talk about. It's pointless.
Well, there are certainly things I believe that I wouldn't be allowed to even say on YouTube. It would shut down the whole... Maybe I already said some of them. It would shut down the whole stream.
How about this? What if we bleep it? And then you just get a reaction, but we're not going to acknowledge what it is.
I'll give you an example of it.
Okay. Do you want us to bleep it?
No, you can keep this. Well, we'll see.
Maybe for our own sake, we might bleep it.
This is the example, and I really promise you I'm not just being cute and glib about this. Here's an opinion I have.
Okay.
When the Parliament voted to oust James II, the King of England, last Catholic monarch, and to invite the Protestant interlopers from Orange, William and Mary, in. That was an unjust act of parliamentary supremacy that created a major problem and sent England on its path of degradation. And there was a Jacobite rising. There were a number of them, the most famous of which was led by Bonnie Prince Charlie from France into Scotland, and it was a bloodbath, and he got lost. And, you know, he totally was destroyed. And then he went back and lived his life in obscurity and sadness. And then through the ages, there have been various pretenders to the throne. Presently, it would be Franz, the Archduke of Bavaria, who is childless and a homosexual, apparently. So then it would pass to his brother, Maximilian, then down to his daughter, Sophia, and then finally down to a young man about our age, Prince Joseph Wenzel of Liechtenstein, who will be the claimant to the throne of England. That's a view that I only somewhat ironically hold. That's an extreme view, I guess. Now, most people would, listening to that, their eyes will glaze over. They say, what the hell, what are you talking about? Who cares about? But that's the kind of political disagreement that I'm most interested in.
I thought maybe you were going to bring up aliens.
The aliens. Give me a break.
I heard you're a big believer.
Here we go. This is
Do they exist? And have you seen proof that they exist?
I think maybe the present royal families are actually the aliens who took over. The aliens are not real. They're not real. And I have friends and loved ones and colleagues who believe that they are, but they're not. They're fake.
How do you know they're fake?
But what about the piece that was recovered?
Oh, which piece was that?
The little tiny guy. The one from Mexico.
I think it was discovered in Mexico.
That guy is real. I love that. This is what I love. These guys, man, so there's a congressional committee to investigate E.T., which is, it just tells you everything about the Congress, right? And they say, no, but there's evidence now. So, cool. What's the evidence? And it was like, well, my cousin's brother's third uncle's neighbor who once saw a movie about the CIA, man, he said he saw a weird light in the sky. Like, well, okay. I don't know. That's not very persuasive. And then the best evidence they had was this little paper mache project from a 5th grade student in Mexico. And they said, here he is. We've got E.T. But E.T. is not real. But demons are real. I guess maybe that's a controversial opinion that I have.
So we spoke with someone who was high up in a certain organization who told us off the record. Now, but this is a firsthand experience. They've seen this firsthand.
Well, now it's third hand from me.
I guess right? So, okay?
Yeah.
But they have told us off the record that they've seen unidentified spacecraft in air that they cannot explain that has been covered up.
I believe that.
That they see these objects come down and will whiz off. And they're in the best technology ever in the world. Yeah. And these things are outpacing by 100 times. And they'll report it, they'll do that, but it disappears.
Yeah, I am inclined to believe that. I mean, that could be a psyop too. Sometimes we do that. Our government pretends to discover things to scare our enemies. And so we might be doing that again. Or it might be enemy technology, or it might be just a failure of perception in radars. But yeah, people probably see things. But the little green men do not exist.
So you don't believe in anywhere in our universe that is infinite, that there can't be life?
Well, the universe probably isn't infinite. It's probably finite, but it's very big. But no, I don't suspect that we'll find life anywhere else in the universe. No, that's not a firm. I wouldn't. If we find some little cell somewhere, I wouldn't. Yeah. That wouldn't totally rock my world. But yeah, I don't think we'll find life anywhere. Basically,
I think that the chance of us being the only living organisms in the entire universe seem pretty small when you really think about it.
Why?
Like, what are the chance? Why? Because I feel like if it could happen
calculate
here,
the chances?
I don't.
Well, then how do you talk about the chances?
I just think that the fact that we're here means there's a good chance that someone else is elsewhere.
Now, why do you think that? Why do you think that our existence here implies the existence of other people somewhere else?
Because I don't believe that our existence is an accident. I don't
think it's an accident either.
So I don't think it would be an accident that there would be something else somewhere.
You're saying you don't think we're special?
I think that we could be unique, but I don't think that us being alive is something that is unique necessarily to us. I feel like life has to exist because we're here.
Yes, you're saying that. So you're stating that a belief. But
yes.
I'm just asking, what about our life here seems to you to imply the existence of any life anywhere else? The answer will involve something about what you believe about life.
I'd say
and
maybe
how we got
maybe
here.
by chance. It feels like if the chance of us here
you think
exists,
we got here by chance.
I do.
Well, that's really what it comes down to. I don't really believe in chance. I believe in providence. But I don't really believe in I don't think that this whole world that we live in our life and everything, I don't think it's just like a big dumb accident and a farce and a joke. I think it's intentional. And so I think that we are special, and I think that we are created by a creator. That being the case, there is nothing about our special existence that would imply the existence of some other kind of life form elsewhere. I even compare human beings to animals on Earth. What separates human beings is that we have a rational soul, right? So we have intellect and will. A cow does not have intellect.
What about octopus?
An octopus is a weirdo and might be an alien, but does not have a rational soul. They always overstate it too. They say, oh, an octopus has the intelligence of a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
I think, well, I don't know what kind of dumb 7-year-olds you're talking to, but looks like a big blob to me that like got out of a container, just like a mouse can too. But anyway, maybe they're smarter than mice, but they're not that smart. And the reason we know this is we would not put an octopus on trial for killing somebody, would we? An octopus sneaks into your home at night, strangles you with all his little tentacles. Would you say, arrest that octopus? He's really smart. He knew what he was doing. No, he's just a dumb octopus.
Well, my understanding is that octopus would be way smarter, but they don't live that long. So that because their lifespans are pretty short, they're not able to advance in the same way that we would. So if they lived 80 to 100 years old, we can have entire octopus civilization. Maybe they might have pets.
They do.
They could have pet crabs and stuff like that if they lived to 80 years old, which they don't.
But look, I don't know what they do down in the water. This is the other crazy thing. We're investigating outer space, which is empty. We should be investigating the oceans, which we know basically nothing about, where probably a bunch of aliens live down there, but like octopuses. But we don't. We're not going to put any of these things, even an 80-year-old octopus, we're not going to put them on trial. And it's because we have a rational will and a soul. And so we can conceive of abstract concepts, and we can think about things like justice, and we can perceive objective reality and reason about it. No other being can do that on Earth. It relates to the way that our wills work, right? We have two wills. You want you want the 10th cup of coffee, but you don't want the 10th cup of coffee because it'll make you jittery. But you want it because it'll taste good and give you a little more caffeine high. And so how do you explain that? You have a disagreement about your wills. Well, one is the higher will. It's rational. It's reasonable. And the one is the lower will. It's the appetite. The animals have the latter, but they don't have the former. And the rational will is understood as mediating between the lower will and the divine will, God's will, perfect will, the objective truth and reality. So if that's the view of things that you're going into with, which is how I view things, then I just don't see any reason to believe that, ET is out there somewhere. Certainly that there's no rational ET out there. I don't even know what that would mean for our own understanding of ourselves, because if you believe what I just said, then you believe that man is made in the image and likeness of God. So what's ET? Is he made in the image and likeness of, I don't know, some like lesser demon or something? I don't know what he like. Does he look just like us?
See, my question when it comes to religion is that there are so many different religions out there, and every religion believes that they are right. And so in virtue of that,
not necessarily.
I tend to think that how do you know which one is the correct one if there are so many out there?
Well, there are a lot of different theories of physics, right? And they contradict one another. So how do you know which one is right? There are a lot of different theories of evolution. And if you're inclined to, be really gung-ho about evolution, well, which one do you think is right? Is it Darwin? Is it Lamarck? Is it some newer strand of either of those? You use your reason, and you separate fact from fiction, and you believe the more persuasive arguments, and you throw out the less persuasive arguments. And that's what you do with religion when it comes to theology. Theology is faith-seeking understanding. So it's applying logic and the rigors of reason to religious claims. And religion is just simply a habit of virtue that inclines the will to give to God what he deserves. So we talk about multiple religions, but there's really only one religion. And we're all just trying to figure out what it is.
But do you believe that other sects of that religion are incorrect or
I don't believe in
worse?
sex before marriage, if that's what I'm Catholic.
Yeah.
I think that's true. I think that's the true faith. So in as much as a religion contradicts that, I think that religion is wrong. Of course, but that's just Aristotle's non-contradiction principle, right? You can't simultaneously believe things that are in opposition. I think even the most atheistic person would say that certain religions seem more plausible than other religions. What would be a good example of this without offending wide swath of the audience. Most people out there would say that Christianity is more plausible than Scientology, right? Why? Well, because Scientology makes all these crazy claims about machines and technology. Okay. Like space aliens. Okay. Well, kind of actually the claims are you guys Scientologists?
Mm-hmm.
You are. I had a feeling. Okay. A bad example then. So we would say that, okay, well, if Christianity is more persuasive than Scientology, then, okay, you've just dismissed one of the religions. Well, how about the other ones? Do you think it's more persuasive than Islam? I do. I think that the historical claims of and the theological claims of Christianity are more persuasive than Islam. Okay, we got rid of that one. How about Judaism? I, have great respect for my Jewish friends and my Muslim friends and even Scientologists, some of them. But Judaism says Jesus is not who he says he is. Christianity says Jesus is who he says he is. Well, I don't know. What is it? And then one investigates this question, and I've arrived at the conclusion that he is who he says he is. Okay, so there goes that religion. How about Buddhism? Well, all the Buddhists I know are just like liberal women in northern Westchester who wear tight pants and, meditate during this. So they're not right about anything. I can easily dismiss that religion. How about Hinduism? Some of my best friends are Hindus. But that's a non-theistic religion. So that's a pretty easy one to reject off the bat because it contradicts plenty of logic and conclusions I've already come to about the nature of being and who created everything. Okay, well, I think we've just handily gotten rid of all the other religions, right? Now, you might say, well, there's a lot of different sects of Christianity. That's true. I just think that the historical claims and the theological claims of the church go back to antiquity. They're well attested to over 2,000 years, and so that's how I landed on that one. Your mileage may vary. Maybe you come to a different one. But at the very least, we've landed roughly in the neighborhood of one another here. We don't just have to throw up our hands and say, well, Johnny says this and Jack says that, so who the hell knows? Everyone can believe whatever they want. Let's not try to arrive at any
Why did you
truth.
become religious?
I was persuaded of it. I was an atheist for 10 years, but that view just is not tenable.
What about it?
Well, it doesn't explain anything.
Why do you need things explained?
Because I'm a rational person.
But how does it not
curious?
How does it not explain certain things? I feel like just by chance is an explanation, right?
How does the chance come about? How does anything come about?
It just, that's the nature of, I feel like, just chance.
One could discuss chance and probability and, I don't know, stochastic systems or whatever, but that you can only do that within the context of a created world, right? You can only do that within the context of I'm a human being with a brain, I think with faculties of reason, on planet Earth, within a universe. And so at a certain point, you have to ask, well, how did all of that come about? And there are plenty of ways to do it. You can ask how anything is in motion. An object is in motion when some other object puts it in motion. Well, what happens when you go all the way back down the line? You need to have an unmoved mover. How do effects come about? I smack you across the face. I would never do such a thing because I'm a lover, not a fighter. But then you would have a little red mark on your face. That's an effect, and the cause was my slap. Well, why did I slap you? I don't know, because I drank too much coffee this morning. Well, that was the cause, and the effect was my irritability. Well, where did the coffee come from? You go all the way back down the line of causes. There has to be an uncaused cause, doesn't there? Perfectibility, the fact that some things are better than other things, the fact that we would all agree, even if you're like a nice, happy, skeptical person, we all agree that it's better to help a little old lady cross the street than it is to kick a newborn baby in the head, right? I think we would all agree with that. Okay, well, if some things are better than other things, then there has to be a maximally great thing, traditionally called a summum bonum. Well, who is that maximally great thing? That would be God. There are many other arguments too. I mean, that's just a handful off the top of my head, but those observations necessarily entail coming to the conclusion that atheism is just like Reddit tier 2006 bunk.
What prompted that, though? There's got to be an event that happened that made you think, that pushed you in that direction.
I'd met smart people, I guess. I mean, this really started my freshman year of college. And I diss my college sometimes because it's kind of super liberal and gone completely off the rails. But there are a lot of intelligent people at it. A lot of them were atheists, no question about it. I noticed the very smartest people were religious. And they presented me with arguments, we're just having little debates and things. They were challenging my thinking, and I didn't have an answer for the arguments that they were making. And so if you have any kind of humility at all, then you you have to say, huh. You never do it in the moment. You never say, yeah, you're totally right, man. I can see the debate. In the moment, you say, you're totally wrong. You're a big jerk, whatever. But then you go home, and if you have any humility whatsoever, you think about it. You say, huh. Yeah, I guess that guy was right. I guess I did lose that debate. And then once you do that for long enough, you come to the correct conclusions, hopefully.
Was your wife on board with the decision to go in a certain way for religion?
She was freaked out by it. She was freaked out. Because, look, we grew up in a big agnostic, liberal New York place. Everyone was functionally an atheist anyway. Whatever their nominal, some people were nominally Jews, some people were nominally Catholics, but basically everyone was a practical atheist, a liberal, really. I mean, they believed what you articulated at the beginning, which is, you do you, leave it alone. We can't really know anything. I don't know, whatever, And I don't mean to diss it. I don't mean to be dismissive in any way. That is the zeitgeist, man. That is the culture we're living in. But as a result of that, when I came around and I said, hey, this might freak you out, but I think God exists. It's so fun. It's so funny. This is the thing that virtually everyone believed for all of human history. But now if you say it's kind of like, it's a little radical. And I said, look, I'm going to go to Mass this weekend. I'm going to go to church. You don't have to come, but I'm just going to go because I think I should. I said, okay. And she kind of, she went with me just to she was freaked out, man. She became less freaked out over time, obviously. We were married in the church and everything, but it can be very jarring. I mean, this is why I keep coming back to liberalism, because I don't mean it in the own the libs way. I mean it in the recognize the air that you're moving in way. We live in a liberal age where all the premises of liberalism are just what we believe. We don't even think about it. And it's not our fault. We don't, you don't wake up every day and write a 5-page report on whether you're going to have waffles or pancakes for breakfast. You just do things, we are animals of prejudice, and we just kind of go about our habits, right? But when you start to pull at that thread, and this is why, to bring us all the way back full circle, this is why the trans issue keeps coming up. Because the trans issue is it's so absurd. Everybody knows a man in a dress is not really a woman. But it's also the logical conclusion of liberalism. It's also the logical conclusion of radical self-sovereignty. It's also the radical conclusion of, I'm going to make my own reality. I'm going to have my own truth. And so once you pull at that thread, you can't stop pulling. The whole thing starts to unravel. So you say, okay, yeah, we shouldn't trans the kids. We shouldn't really trans anybody. Actually, men and women are different, which means that marriage is what it used to mean, not what people say it means now, which means that feminism is kind of bunk too, which means that liberalism is kind of bunk too, which means we're actually not radical individuals. We don't make ourselves. Oh my goodness gracious. The last 500 years has been a total series of errors.
What if your wife did not want to convert with you? What if she says, I disagree with you. You could have your religion. I don't see the things the same way. I can't do that. Would that be a deal breaker for you?
No, it wouldn't be a deal breaker at first, because I'm what the late conservative writer William F. Buckley called an epistemological optimist. Meaning, it's a very unfortunate and pretentious phrase, but it means that I think we can know things. And I'm confident in the rational faculties of my loved ones, not just my wife, but people like my good friends too. And so I'm confident that if something is true, and that I think it's true, and I'm a relatively persuasive person, I think, that I'll be able to persuade them of that. Or maybe it's not true. Maybe I'm mistaken. I make mistakes sometimes, a rare occasion. And if it's not true, I'm confident in their rational faculties and solid, character, that they'll be able to persuade me. Some people really worry about this when they talk about values alignment. And it's true, especially if the person that you were dating is, not the brightest, not the most humble, not the most open to things. You want to make sure that you agree on basic stuff. But I think that people are persuadable, and I think people do have reason, and they're amenable. Even if you're really far down the rabbit hole, people are attracted to truth at a certain point, and to beauty and to goodness. And, eventually you want those things. So I'm not afraid of it. I don't treat dating or friendship like, you've got to check boxes on a checklist. Say, okay, you scored 75. All right, we can get married. You got to see. I don't think so. You're a human being. Do you get along? Do you love the person? All right, then you'll grow together.
Let's talk about maintaining a marriage. How long have you been married at this point?
5.5 years.
5.5
we
years.
just had our 5-year anniversary in Memphis, Tennessee, the most romantic city in America. No, I don't know. She recommended. I said, we can go to the Caribbean. We'll do whatever you want.
She wanted
She
Memphis.
said, Mac, I want to go to Memphis.
What's in Memphis?
Well, it's more about how do you get to Memphis. She didn't want to get on an airplane for a day or two. And so we had to do someplace we could drive to. And there aren't that many places to drive if you're in Nashville. Go to Chattanooga. That's not that romantic. Go to Louisville. I don't know. Drink some bourbon and hit a baseball. Yeah. And so Memphis, it was great. We went to Graceland, went to Elvis's house, and then where else did we go? We went to this hotel that has ducks and had a nice dinner, and it was really fabulous. Yeah. But so anyway, that was 5. So I guess we've been married like 5.
Louisville is one of the few places that we've been.
Yeah,
really?
Went to Louisville. Yeah.
Papa John.
It was all right. Yeah, we collabed with him.
Papa John,
Schnotter. Yeah.
Oh man, that guy's great.
You should collab with him.
Yeah,
I'd love to. I've never met him.
They're looking for collabs.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
But okay,
I love
this is
that
a question.
Little garlic sauce. I could take that like shots.
Yeah, it's very good. This is a question I love to ask most of our guests. If you think your wife does not look great in a dress, do you tell her?
Yes. Now, it's rare. My wife is a hottie. There's no doubt about it. And there was actually, she's going to get angry because I'm like telling tales out of school. She was trying on 2 dresses for an event like a couple months ago. And so she tries one on. And it's just like, yo, girl, let's clear the night. She's like, Matt, get out of here. I just want your opinion on the dress, whatever. She's like, I want to try another one on. And she tried the other one on. It was a pretty dress, but it didn't garner that reaction. So I told her, I was like, yeah, that dress is fine. That dress is just like super hot. You should get like 3 of that dress, And so I'll do it. But I'd never say, like, hey, you look fat and frumpy in a dress. So that doesn't seem like a good idea,
Why does your wife sound like Eric Cartman?
That's a good question.
Many people have asked that. So because she's a cartoon 3rd grader from Colorado, actually.
Got it.
I was doing that voice. We started dating.
It's my body. I do what I want.
Now, Mac, you will respect my authority. I was 16 and my much younger bride was 15 and a half. And I don't know. I thought I would pronounce her name Elisa. Like it's Alyssa, but I pronounce it Elisa, this like romantic Italian. And I don't know why I would put on this Italian accent. And then I would have her do an Italian accent. She's not Italian. She doesn't speak Italian. And she would go, and then it started out as like, well, I'm Elisa. And then it became a little more Mexican. It was like, well, I'm Elisa, hey, Elisa. And then it became a little like Consuelo almost, like from, like, well, Elisa, And then now I think it's fully like Eric Carr. It's fully Mexican Eric Carr. Like, Mac, listen here, Mac.
So I also want to know, in settling an uncomfortable conversation with your wife, do you treat these conversations a little bit differently than you would treat conversations with, let's say, like a work colleague or a peer or something like that?
Yeah, I don't sleep with most of my work colleagues.
Well,
or a debate.
Like, yeah, because we were talking it was Ben Mala, right? And I think I asked him something like, how do you approach difficult conversations or debates with your wife? And he just said she's right all of the time.
Oh, that's so gay. That's so gay.
He defers to her.
Oh, that's
happy wife,
sad.
Happy life is what he says.
Oh no. Oh, that's
he
like,
says though he handles the business.
He handles the business and the finances and the big decisions.
I don't want
like
to.
She will do everything
Ben
else.
Mala.
I don't
but
know.
when it comes to the business, he's doing that.
Okay, Ben Mala, I just gotta say, he's a saint.
I'm sure he's a great guy. I feel bad. I just called him.
If you met him, you would love him.
I'm sure I would. So I feel bad that but the view that he was articulating is so gay and cuckolded, actually. And so
but what if it works for him?
It doesn't. It doesn't.
It seems like he's pretty happy. They've been married, 25 years? Something like that.
Yeah, because of all the other great things in his life. I'm sure he's a great guy. I really don't mean to diss him, but that view is like a feminist view. It's very sad because the question, you ask, how do you settle an argument? I take my wife's views into consideration all the time. In fact, she practically, to give your pal credit, practically, she probably makes many, if not most, of the decisions around the house. What are we going to do on the weekend? What are we going to have for dinner? What are the boys going to wear? Who are we going to see? What are we, where are we going for the holidays a lot of the time? But in our household, we do this a little the old fashioned way. I still view the husband as the head of the household, which is an office that, is not exercised explicitly all the time, but sometimes it is. If you really come to a final impasse, the husband is going to decide. That's my view. Because the alternative is the wife is going to decide. And that doesn't seem right to me. That's not how any culture has ever viewed it properly. That's not how Christendom, has ever viewed it. It seems kind of weird to me. Is your wife? Do you take your wife's hand when you get married?
The idea is that there won't necessarily be impasses if you're so aligned, and I think that's kind of where Ben is probably with his wife. Yeah. But there's never been an actual thing where he's exercised, his power like that.
Well, obviously he hasn't, because he gives it all to his wife. But
I think he's deferring those decisions, like you mentioned, about where are we vacationing, where are we going for dinner, this and that, because he runs the business, which is.
We can't move on from this. This is a big problem. He runs the business. Yeah, I run my business too, but I run my household too. Or I'm at least the head of my household. My wife actually manages it all of the time, and my wife is my wife, and my wife is the hand that rocks the cradle, is the hand that rules the world, and my wife is a living saint. She's all these things. But we're talking about in an argument when there's a disagreement, and what you said is your pal says, "Happy wife, happy life." You win always. We do what you want to do, which means that your wife is your husband now. And I just think that's crazy. I don't think women want that.
But here's what I think, though. Here's what I think, and what I've noticed, at least for myself, and I'm not married but engaged. Yeah. How strongly do you feel on a certain thing? And that's usually what I kind of defer to, where if she's like, I really need to go and get Chipotle tonight. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't really care. I don't want Chipotle, but if you feel that strongly, absolutely, we'll do. But if I feel really strongly about like, no, I can't get Chipotle tonight. You could get Chipotle, but I'm going to get this. It's really like, who wants something more? And if she feels more strongly about one thing than I do, then it's her. But if I feel more strongly about one thing than she does, then it's me. And
but how do you know that? How do you measure that? No, I really feel more strongly. No, I think
it's a discussion. I believe when she said this is like really, like there are certain things that she said, this is really important to me, that you're here for this, or that you do this one thing. This means a lot. And if I don't match that same level of conviction, I'm fine with it. If we get to a disagreement where I'm like, I'm really against it, you're really for it, sometimes we'll sleep on it and just talk about it. And then sometimes we could just say, well, we'll agree to disagree on this one thing. I'm okay with this. We'll move on to the next one.
So you'll say, we agree to disagree, but I'll do what you want to do.
No. I think, not that I'll agree to do that, but that, we could table this for another time.
Well, then you're just pushing it off.
Yeah.
So what if the question, though, becomes something a little more important than Chipotle, which is, where the kids go to school? And look, that can totally shape a person's life. I married my wife from 6th grade, and you have a big disagreement on that. She wants to send the kid to public school. You want to send the kid to some private school. Well, that's going to have big effects on your family's finances. That's going to have big effects on your kids' education.
But I think these are discussions to have before getting married. Like these are discussions that should be happening before having kids.
What about the city you want to live in? You want to take a job in St. Louis, and she wants to stay with her sister in San Diego.
Well, that was a discussion that we had when we left California, moved to Vegas, was a big discussion. And so I took her opinion into consideration. She took mine. I talked to Jack about it. I mean, it was not just an overnight, like, all right, let's go and move.
You still made the decision.
I think the will to move was stronger than her desire to stay, given our circumstances at the time.
Yeah, that's good. That's a great. Yeah. But you do it the way that I do it.
But here's the thing: if she says, you know what, if you move to Vegas, we're going to break up. That would put a whole different spin on things.
What if your wife said that? Because you weren't married at the time.
Right,
and
correct.
You're engaged. Right. So what if your wife said, if you don't do what I want, we're getting divorced?
I don't like ultimatums. So for me, it would be the nature of
we're just talking about an ultimatum. You just brought up an ultimatum.
I don't think that's an ultimatum.
I think we'll break up if you move?
I think that would be something that she's entitled to, that opinion. And not wanting to go somewhere. I'm not going to force anybody to move where they don't want to move.
What if she's your wife? Be something. What if she's your wife, though?
I think that would probably be deserving of therapy, and really getting to the root cause of it, and figuring out, can there be a compromise where maybe we say, okay, let's move here, but you're going to visit your family so often, so we're going to make time to go back. I feel like a lot of things can be compromised in such a way where it's not like all or nothing.
Yeah,
it's like,
look,
hey, I'll give you a little bit, you give me a little bit. It's a partnership in this.
I fear this. I practically, I largely agree.
Yeah,
but in principle, I fear this this perspective a little bit, because it turns everything, every conversation with your wife, into a negotiation. You're always trying to get a little bit, well, maybe I'll have more of my say on this, and I'm going to give on here because then I'm going to score some points, I'm going to bank them, and then I'm going to be able to get my way later on down the road. And I think clarity is charity. And I think if you, Drew Clavin gave me good advice. He said, keys to marriage: don't sleep with other people, throw out feminism. If you say from the outset, look, we're going to do this the old-fashioned way, and I love you, but ultimately, I'm going to have the final say. And if I got to move to St. Louis, we're moving to St. Louis, the whole family, and I'm not going to hear peep about it. I think it reduces anxiety, actually. It reduces tension, because you recognize that you have different spheres of influence. You recognize that you have different roles in a marriage. You recognize that you have different responsibilities in a marriage. I think a lot of the times, men do not want to be the decider. I think this is actually the secret of Genesis chapter 3, which is sometimes cited by feminists as patriarchal and, knuckle dragging, whatever. Because it says, men love your husbands. Men love your husbands. That's what it says now. That's what the rewrite says. Men love your wives, and wives submit to your husbands. Oof, yikes. And so we see this throughout Scripture. In Genesis chapter 3, we see to the wife, your desire will be for your husband, but he will rule over you. And rather than viewing this as a little reward given to Adam for his disobedience in the Garden of Eden, I see it as a little bit of a punishment, or a corrective at least, because I don't think men want to rule over women. I don't want to rule over women. You know what I want to do? I want to sit on the couch, and I want to sit in my boxers and eat potato chips and strum a ukulele and watch movies. That's what I really, if you told, and smoke a cigar, Mayflower cigar, that's what I would do. I am called by the circumstances of this fallen world to be the head of my household, and to make decisions, and to work by the sweat of my brow. And I have to do that. That's my role. But it's not my natural inclination. And so I think a lot of guys, they follow their worst instincts, and they just say, nah, man, wife does whatever she wants, and I'm just, I'm a schlub. I'm Ray Romano in that sitcom. I'm Kevin James in that sitcom. I'm both great guys. But that era, I'm Homer Simpson. I'm just like the big dumb schlubby husband, and she makes all the decisions. That's not good. That's not. I don't think that's going to lead to happiness.
That's really interesting, because in my relationships that I've had, obviously with women, I feel like I just care so much less about so many things than they care about.
Yes.
Like to them, just like everything is the world, but to me, it's just like,
Jack is very carefree.
Tell me where to show up and when.
Yes.
Tell me what to wear. Tell me, how to do my hair. Just whatever. I just don't care. Yeah. There are like maybe 3 things that I care deeply about. Everything else, I'll defer to you.
I know. The issue is, though, if you cultivate this habit of just like letting your wife do whatever she wants, even if you don't really like it, you just don't care enough. So you're like, I don't like it, but whatever, I'll go along. It's not my big deal. I'll show up. Ultimately, that's going to build up a little bit of resentment, and it's going to build up on your part, and it's going to build up some entitlement on your wife's part. And then when the rubber does meet the road on a really difficult decision, I think you're going to regret your behavior until that point. When the rubber really meets the road and she's not going to move on the issue, but you've never exercised your role as the head of your household, and you've never even expressed that you have a desire for anything, you just show up, you're going to be at a very hard impasse. And it's not even about what the decision is going to be. You're in San Diego or St. Louis. It's going to be, how do you even make decisions? It gets back to a fundamental question. What is the family? What is the marriage? What is it that we're doing together? I think this is what leads to a lot of divorce. We're just roommates, just negotiating something? Women are exactly like men, and men are exactly like women, and we relate to one another in the same way I'd relate to my button? Or is this something special and different with roles and duties? I think it's the latter.
So you were on the Whatever podcast, by the way. We're going almost 2 hours here, but that was like, what, 5 hours?
That was 5 hours. Now, you guys, you're a little more succinct and clear in some of your views than some of our friends who were on the Whatever podcast. So maybe that was why I went on longer.
What prompted you to go on the Whatever podcast?
Because I have an associate producer who is a hip, young, cool Zoomer. We call him Professor Jacob. He's this cool. He's like 12 years old. And he was like, Mr. Knowles. Yeah? you got to go on the whatever podcast. I was like, what's that? He's like, and he showed me. And I said, oh, I've seen these clips everywhere.
Yeah.
This thing is great. I was like, there's no way they'd want me to go on that show though. I don't know. He said, no, they do. They want you to go. I said, let's go. Now, there was a conflict of intentions here because the point of going on that show is to make fun of these poor, ignorant young women. That's the whole point. And you make fun of them and then they look stupid and then you get a great viral clip. And I just thought, man, that's kind of mean. I'm not going to California to go just make fun of these young women because it's not their fault. Most of them grew up in broken homes and they don't know anything and they're attending some stupid school that doesn't teach them anything and they don't know. And they live in a swipe culture and they're all being exploited and used and they're on OnlyFans. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do this show a little differently. I'm going to do the show on their side. So often, Brian, who I like, the guy who runs the show, often it was not me and Brian against the girls. Often it was me and the girls attacking Brian's points of view.
But were you switching up your principles then?
No, because the girls are wrong. I mean, I pointed out when they were wrong plenty of times too. But Brian, well, he's probably more correct than them on some like basic things. Brian said he didn't want to get married. So you don't want to get married. That's gay. You know, I'm making this accusation a lot now.
Why do you keep using that term?
I'm like that guy.
That's a not very inclusive term. You know that.
It's very inclusive. There are a lot of gay guys.
Gay?
So I'm including them.
Why can't you just say you disagree?
Because I
think,
disagree,
like,
but specifically I disagree because that view is gay.
Right, but okay, but the problem that I have with calling something...
Why are you gay?
Why are you gay? You are gay.
Well,
you are gay. Like that guy on the Ghana.
I have a problem, I feel like, with, at least if I'm trying to understand your motive, like your desired outcome of going on these shows and speaking the truth or whatever, your truth, whatever you want to call it. I don't think it's going to yield good benefit or desired results if you say things are gay in a derogatory way. Because it's not like someone maybe who's gay is going to hear that and they're going to be like, oh, this guy, he thinks all gay people are bad. Or,
listen,
you know,
I'm an icon of the gay community. You know, I have plenty of friends. Look, I lived in New York. I lived in LA. I went to the gayest university on
what
planet
university?
Earth, Yale.
Okay.
So they say 1 in 4, maybe more at Yale. You know, and I have a disproportionate number of homosexually identifying friends and people with variously eccentric views. But you know, my view is that we shouldn't recommend the LGBT activism. I think that's not a good thing to recommend.
But it's not recommending that. It's just, like I said, if your desired result is to hopefully find a middle ground where you can both agree on something,
no, my desired result is to arrive at the truth. That's my desired result.
But don't you
is it for yourself or to help other people arrive at the truth?
For everybody.
But if you're trying to help other people arrive at the truth, calling something gay in a bad way in front of another gay person, I'm not even
saying
it's
really good. I think it's really good to do because
I think people they recoil when you attack at like
maybe you recoil. I don't think a lot of other people.
I think a lot of
people grew up on the playground saying, hey, that shirt's really gay, ha ha ha, and then everybody laughs. I think everybody used this kind of language until 5 minutes ago, and in no way is it mocking or attacking any people who have kind of eccentric sexual desires or anything like that. I think it's just kind of gay.
But even if it alienates,
I think this whole conversation.
But imagine it alienates 1 or 2% of the audience. Is that worth it?
In this case, I'm using it in a very specific way and intentionally, much as I would use the word eradicate at my CPAC speech with regard to transgender ideology.
So it's
I'm using it
attention.
No, that's what the liberals accused me of, but that's because they have difficulty understanding words. The reason I use the word eradicate there is because I specifically was referring to uprooting an entire ideology, root and branch. And the reason I use gay specifically in this case is one, because it's kind of funny and we've all used it, even though we all politically correctly now pretend that we don't. We're all clutching our pearls. But the other thing, we all pretend that the homosexuals are offended by it. They're not. Homosexuals are outrageous people a lot of the time, and they're men a lot of the time, and they're tough guys. It's like macho man in the Village People. The reason I'm using it specifically here is because gay refers to an entire view of the sexual ethic. A view of the sexual ethic that views men and women as indiscernible and substitutable for one another, and a view of the sexual ethic that is ultimately sterile, that separates means from ends. And so I'm doing that very intentionally.
You're doing using the esoteric way, right?
I don't think that's so esoteric. I think it's playing on the proper meaning of the word, and it's showing people the issue from a perspective that has been kept from them.
But when you just say the word gay, no, without any context behind it, people are not going to put that meaning the way that you meant it. They're not going to do all the background thinking of, oh, he means it like this, and if you extrapolate to this.
But when I use a word that everyone used until 5 minutes ago, that now the politically correct censors won't let us use, when I use that word, what I am saying is I will not ascribe to your left-wing censorship regime. And you're right, it might put some people off. It'll at least raise their eyebrows, even if they're not offended. I don't think many people are actually offended by it, but it'll raise their eyebrows at least at first. But the consequence of that will be that it will start to crack away at the left-wing censorship regime, which uses a cycle of euphemisms to constantly change the words that we're allowed to use for anything.
I would disagree. I think it would cause a lot of people to check out immediately. They would hear you saying something like this and immediately think, oh, it's one of these guys. Anything he says
my speech has a lot of views on it.
Anything you say after that, then you're going to tune out or not take as seriously as saying, I disagree with the concept of marriage because of this. To me, that sounds a lot more eloquent and a lot more sophisticated than saying, oh,
and understanding, which is, I feel like, the number one thing that you need to be if you're trying to persuade other people.
I guess my evidence to the contrary is I've given many long lectures using very dry language on all of these questions, and you've never seen any of them, and none of those clips have ever gone viral.
So then it's for attention. Conversion rate.
It's
on those.
Not merely for attention. It's so that
your message
important
gets heard.
point is heard by people in a precise and just way.
But then I think it's also, do you want your message to be heard, or do you want it to impact the people in a positive way that you would like to get your message across? Because getting attention and just saying crazy stuff will get crazy attention.
I don't think I'm saying any crazy stuff. I think I'm saying very reasonable, true stuff.
But just taking to the extreme and saying, I'm going to say something that'll get attention, that will do well on social media, versus I'm going to say something, it's not going to get as much attention, but the people who watch it will take my ideas into consideration. It'll make more of an impact than saying something.
I think that my CPAC speech dominated the national discourse for at least a week after I gave it. And it wasn't exclusively my CPAC speech. It was Matt Walsh's What is a Woman movie. It was the work of TERF radical feminists I'm really not taking credit for all of this. But I do think that my speech at CPAC and the positive way that it was received by the American right and a lot of the American middle, and the screeching, crazy reaction that came from the left and the lies that came from the establishment media, helped to expand the window of discourse and helped to move that issue more in our direction. And it's led to laws that have been proscribing the transgender ideology in public life. So I think it was very persuasive. And it did get people's attention. It did. I actually didn't intend for it to get that much attention, but it did. And I think that's a good thing. And yes, the libs are going to accuse me of all sorts of things, genocide or whatever. But it's ridiculous, and reasonable people know that's ridiculous. Just as when I say that, a guy saying that my wife gets to run the whole show at home and I don't have a say, so that's kind of gay, man. I don't think that homosexuals at home are saying that awful, terrible man, he wants to throw me off a roof like the Taliban. No, they're saying, okay, he's using a word that we don't use as much in the last 5 years, but a lot of people have used for a long time, and he's using it in a derogatory way because he's criticizing an action of a husband with his wife, and he's using it in a precise way because he's saying that that view of sexual relations is essentially the same view as the gay view, which is that men and women are basically the same. So I think it operates on a lot of levels, and the proof of the pudding is in the tasting. I'm happy to give a really dry academic lecture, but that message is not going to penetrate. To some people it will. I'll give it in I'm giving a lecture on Dante this coming summer. I can't wait to do it. It's going to be extremely academic, very dry. A lot of people will consider it boring, probably. The people in the room will love it.
I tend to believe that you could spice up your message without alienating even 1 or 2% of your audience, whatever that may be, without using...
What do you mean by alienate?
I think when you say the term, that's gay. I think the people who would be really receptive to you and want to hear what you have to say might tune you out at that point.
Why? Because they think that I disapprove of the sexual revolution?
I think that you would use terms that maybe are not...
it's just an aggressive term.
It is. I'd say
when
same
did
with the term.
When did it become an aggressive term?
It doesn't matter how you're transmitting it.
No,
right?
I'm just
But
asking when
matters-
it became an aggressive
how
term.
it-
I'm
but it's
saying
how
that's
it's
not even a
received.
part of this discussion. I'm saying it matters how it's received.
Well, all right, but I got to get an answer to this question. You're saying it's an aggressive term. That's very shocking for me to hear. For
Right,
my
it be-
whole life, that wasn't an aggressive term.
Right, but
so
now
when
it
did
is.
When did it become an aggressive term?
Probably in the last couple of years.
Exactly. Exactly. So what are we going to do? Are we going to accept the radical redefinition of basic words by the left and just play along with their words? And what, pretty soon I'm going to start calling Bruce Jenner she or Caitlyn. And then I've accepted transgenderism. Because here's the point. When you use the language framed by your ideological adversaries, you accept their whole premise. When you start talking about the right to marriage equality rather than the meaning of marriage, there's no debate to be had. You've already accepted that two men can marry one another just as a man and a woman can marry one another. You've already accepted that. You're just asking who has the right to do it. You've lost the debate. The moment that you call Bruce Jenner Caitlyn, that's a girl's name, or if you call Bruce Jenner she, especially, you've accepted the premise of transgenderism. And you're right. If I call Bruce Jenner he, people are going to recoil at that. I'm going to alienate 1% of the audience by saying that because I'm not supposed to call him Bruce. I'm not supposed to call him him. I guess I'll alienate some radicals, but I will show the vast majority of the audience the reality as I see it, which I think is
So that's
correct.
what I've been trying to understand this whole time, is that if you're optimizing for impact, you think that your route would be more impactful than maybe the other
You're
route.
giving me way too much credit. You're making me out to be some big strategist calculator of every piece of rhetoric I use. It's not that complex. I just endeavor to tell the truth. I endeavor to speak the truth, and I endeavor to speak the truth in really plain terms. I'm with George Orwell on this. Politics in the English language. We should use simple terms. We should use Saxon words over Latinate words when we can. We should use terms that are vivid, and I guess we call that aggressive. But George Orwell would say it's plain. It's clear. It presents to people reality, because if we don't use that, if we just use the euphemisms and the mealy-mouthed politically correct words, then people are going to continue to see a fantasy. If we talk about an illegal alien, then we know that's the kind of person who has no right to be in the country. If we talk about an undocumented future American dreamer, well, that paints a picture for you, whether you're aware of it or not, of someone who has absolutely every right to be in the country, probably more than you do. If we talk about she, the trans woman, well, she has every right to go into that bathroom. She's a she. If we say it's a he and he's a dude and he's wearing a dress and that man has no right to go into the bathroom. The clarity here in language, you might call it aggressive. I think it's the only option.
I'm not saying that I personally find that aggressive. I'm saying in the way that it's received and digested in the people
This is the key. You think the language is just fine. You probably think
I'm
the
not
language is
labeling
rough.
it either way.
You just said you don't think it's aggressive.
I said I'm not
I'd probably be more
But
against
it's at least
it,
not
but-
aggressive. Or you think it is aggressive.
I think it
Or you're just
it
not
is
willing
what
to
the
say.
impact is, probably.
No, I'm asking what you think, man.
What
I'm
do
not
I
asking-
think? If someone told me that, no, I wouldn't be, super sensitive to it.
And I think basically everyone is like you. And I think that we're all just afraid of offending some hypothetical third party that doesn't really exist. And I think that is how the left controls the whole dialogue, because we're all normal guys. And everyone you talk to, even if they say, I'm a gay guy, or I'm a this thing, or I'm a that thing, or whatever. I don't know what language they're supposed to use now, but very few people actually get offended by any of this stuff. It is the fear, the hypothetical fear of offending the other, that keeps us all trapped in this linguistic prison, living in a web of lies, rather than just speaking the truth clearly, truth that we can all basically perceive.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming on
Really
the Iced Coffee Hour.
appreciate it.
Thank you very much to the Daily Wire, and thank you so much to the production crew that set
Going
all of
late,
this up. This is
Eating
incredible.
into the lunchtime.
Every single time
Yeah.
we come over here, we have a great time. We're going to wrap this up with one final thing.
Yep.
We're going to do word association.
Okay.
I want to know the first thing that comes to your mind when I say Michael Knowles,
Sexy.
Matt Walsh,
Not.
Ben Shapiro.
That's my answer. Yeah.
Finally, Brett Cooper.
A marvelous, wonderful, bright, shining future of this country. Was that one word?
Yeah.
No, that was just one emotion. That girl, she's great.
Great.
Cool. Thank
Cool.
you so much, Michael.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
guys.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.